Good afternoon, and welcome to Mayo Clinic and our webinar today on 5 ways to decrease stress during the holidays. My name is Brooke Werneburg, and my colleague Jamie Friend and I will be sharing some tips with you coming from the Mayo Clinic Healthy Living program around stress management. We are resiliency specialists, and in this work, we typically work with individuals and guests, sometimes small groups, around behavior change, dealing with stress and coping, and resiliency skills that they can use really all year long. So take that with you today, that these can be tips and suggestions that maybe you can use, not just for the holidays, but really any time of year. So thank you for joining us. For today's session, we'll be having some discussion around stress, positive emotion, gratitude, and daily strategies that you'll be able to experience some today, as well as back to work or back to your family life. And as you experience these or are hearing these, we invite you to maybe write down your ideas or responses on your own. Feel free to take them with you. After our discussion, we'll be having some time for question and answer. So feel free to use your chat function today and be able to write us a question that you may have, and we'll save plenty of time for that at the end of this afternoon's webinar. This session is being recorded, and we'll have some playback options for you through the Mayo Clinic Connect website and portal, so feel free to share these tips with your friends or colleagues, or review again at another time in your life where you might need it. So as we're exploring stress, we thought it might be helpful that we created a recipe for stress management, just like a recipe you might have over the holiday time for your family or loved ones. And these are our objectives for today's session. One, we really want to be able to catch stress happening, catch it, notice it, observe it, and really create an awareness around stress and what you notice within yourself or maybe others when stress is happening. We're going to examine what's within your control. Control is a huge component when we look at tangible factors that we can explore to help with stress management. So take that with you as well. What can I control in some of my situations or my reaction or response when encountering stress? And then lastly, we're going to be reviewing just some 5 basic strategies that you can explore with trying these out with communication styles or just creating some time for yourself to implement during stressful experiences.
So to kick things off today, we want to take a look at a pause moment to consider. You can just think this through in your mind, or you can jot it down depending on what's most comfortable for you. But we want to look at what brings people to the webinar today. When you heard this topic of stress management, what was it that intrigued you with that? Often, as we have on the screen, some people might say, I'm looking for less stress in the holiday. And that is a wonderful goal, right? It's a wonderful thing, and we hear that with a lot of the people we work with. But what we want to consider is, how do you know that? We need to make it measurable. We need to have something that we can relate to see, is this working? Is this strategy or technique helpful for me? So how would you define less stress this holiday season? How are you going to know it when you experience it? What will it look like? And a big question, if you haven't asked yourself this already, what do you want the holidays to feel like this year? As specific as you can, so that after the experience is over, you can go back and reflect and say, what was the learning in this? What did I notice was different this year? What might I explore or try new for next year? As with any goal, sometimes we forget that stress management, just like working on an exercise goal, wanting to run more or lift weights, for example, we still need to get specific as far as what that overall goal is that we're trying to achieve. So we invite you to consider that as we go through our time together today.
You know what I really like about that philosophy, Jamie, is that it brings in that element of control again already, right. Control in our thinking for how do I want this to look for this holiday season. You're already being proactive in trying to determine how you want to reduce your stress this year. Sure. Versus stress happening to you, you're taking the reins a little bit early. Right. I think that's a great philosophy.
Absolutely. So looking at stress, we often find that there's 3 components that can cause the makeup of stress. One is a sense of lack of control, lack of meaning, or demand-resource imbalance. So some examples of this might be, let's say it's your traditional holiday and you guys are in a gift-giving mode. That's what you do, right? Perhaps in your family it's this way. You're expected to buy gifts for everyone in your family. maybe you're sensing a lack of control there. It's a tradition. That's what you always do. It's expected of you. We can feel sometimes a lack of our own input or control in that situation. Maybe a lack of meaning. To you, the holidays might not be about the gifts. It might be just spending time together, having fun with your family and those that are around you. And then demand resource imbalance. Sometimes with that gift giving and following through with those traditions, that can be financially challenging at times. That can cause us stress. So a great way to ponder this is, what am I noticing for myself? Is this stress coming from a sense of lack of control, sense of lack of meaning, or maybe I'm just feeling like there's too much being asked of me that I can't follow through right now? But the other thing I like about this is to then turn it around and consider those people that you're interacting with. If we have those family members or close friends that we're interacting with, and maybe it's a stressful situation, I could think about, well, maybe is there something that Brooke is sensing a lack of control in this situation that we're in? Maybe she's not finding what we're doing here meaningful. Have I ever asked you what's important to you about the holidays? What do you find meaningful about our experience? So turning this around to consider not only yourself, but those that you're interacting with as well, can help give us a little more choice in our interactions with people.
So what you're saying there is really shifting that perspective, not just seeing it from my vantage point, but maybe taking into consideration my family members or friends and how maybe they're viewing this, this moment. Might be different.
Yeah, and I'm absolutely not going to say, hey, I think you're sensing a lack of control in that situation. But what I am going to do is just have that awareness. Maybe there's something I could do here that might help in that situation. Gives me more opportunity of how to move forward with things.
And it provides a little bit of empathy for trying to understand someone else. And I think that can be helpful at this time.
Right. So before we move forward from this, I invite you to consider for yourself, if you're looking at your own stress this holiday, where do you think it might be stemming from? Do you think it might be a sense of control, not having the input or the participation that you'd like? Are you missing the meaning in some of the things you're going through? Or perhaps something is being asked too much of you at that moment. So take a pause and consider, when you're thinking about what's bringing you here today, what might be behind that additional stressor that you're experiencing. When we think about the holidays, before I bring up this next slide, I want you guys to consider, and Brooke and I will look at this too, what are some things that cause us stress during the holidays? When we just ask that question, what stresses me out? You can, again, write this down or just brainstorm in your own mind. What do you notice? What causes stress for you? You may notice some of these things come to mind, right? Family, just a lot of people we're interacting with, extra holiday parties, we're traveling more. We never know about weather conditions in Minnesota, right? So especially if we're traveling. Health concerns of ourselves or loved ones, missing loved ones, people that maybe aren't able to be there with us, those that have passed on. So perhaps there's some of these things in our list of stressors for this holiday. But what we invite you to look at too, how many of these things on this list are a part of what make the holidays for you, that you really enjoy? And you say, you know what, this just really wouldn't be the holiday season if this family member wasn't there. Like, it just wouldn't make it for me. I would absolutely need to interact with this person. Or no matter what, I am traveling to this house means so much to me. There's a lot of memories there. I want to make a part of that. So taking a pause moment, we're very quick to think about things that stress us out, but those very same things are quite often the pieces that bring us the most joy. Would you say?
I would agree. As you were talking, it made me think about my Iowa travels, because I have family all over Iowa, and we try and hit as many holidays, celebrations as possible. And the pre-thinking that goes into it of how are we going to make this work? What are the road conditions going to be like? We really only will spend 2 hours at each one before we land for the evening, but yet I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Right.
And so when I find myself getting caught up in those thinking patterns, it's just a good reminder to kind of pull back and reshift the mindset a little bit.
Right. Knowing that these things that stress us out, it's a matter of perspective, right?
Yeah.
All in how we choose to look at it.
So we're going to introduce here 5 strategies for success to help you build your practices with stress management and coping, and maybe even finding some more joy in this holiday season coming up. And the 5 strategies we're looking at are really building this awareness. And we have this as our first strategy because it's really laying that foundation. Without awareness, we really can't do a whole lot more. Awareness just is so key in order to change behaviors or change our responses. 2, we've talked about that magic word of control, and where can we execute this in our thinking or build more of this into our regimen for less stress. We're going to explore positive emotions. What are these and how do I kind of savor them? We're going to experiment, and what this means is an experimental mindset. So it's really shifting our thinking and perspectives. And then again, that word of savoring. How do I really savor or pause to take everything in, to be able to build that lasting memory but positive affect on us as well. So our first piece here that we're looking at is building in this present moment awareness. So we're going to do this exercise together, if you wouldn't mind doing it with me, Jamie, and you at home. If you could, just go ahead and quiet your mind, still your body. You can close your eyes if you wish. And we're just going to settle in here to this space, whether you are at home in an office, whether you are at work in a cubicle, as best you can. Just settle into the chair maybe that you're sitting. I'd invite you to turn your attention to your breath. Simply just noticing your breath coming in through your nose, filling your lungs, and exhaling back to the room today. And perhaps you notice the cool air coming in and the warmth on the exhale. And perhaps you notice the rise and the fall of your chest or your shoulders. Taking pause today just to see what you observe in yourself, in our breath, in your body, and in your mind. And I'll have you put your attention on your next 3 breaths. And when you're ready, you can begin to open your eyes and come back to the space, bringing your attention back with us today. And Jamie, I'll turn it to you first. Where was your attention during that exercise, or what did you notice in yourself?
So I love doing that exercise during presentations because it's very much eye-opening and informing about yourself during that time. A few things. My mind was jumping around to what's upcoming in the day, what do I have to do as soon as I get back, but also a strong sense of just my physical presence in this moment. Could sense my heart beating. As you were talking about breath, notice that I was breathing more in my chest and my shoulders, perhaps taking a deeper breath at times. So noticing it jumping around a little bit in attention.
Yeah, so that's a great activity, and just noticing where is my attention in any present moment. Chances are, even with the first 10 minutes that guests have been with us today, our attention's been all over the board. So if we can kind of hone in on, is my attention present with what the activity is or the experience is right now? Again, we're building that awareness for present moment. You forecasted to the future a little bit. What left do I have to do at work when I get back to the office? Or maybe even we recount the past, a past conversation maybe that didn't go well, something I wish I would have done differently from last night or yesterday. So our mind is very busy. It takes us in multiple directions. But this breath activity, or just checking in with your body and your mind, can really bring you to that present moment for really just absorbing in that moment. And I don't know if you noticed this, but it forces me to slow down a little bit and just kind of take everything in, give me a different perspective, and maybe what I have left to do or what I didn't do right from yesterday simmers down a little bit in my thinking when I can just be very present in this time. So 2 things with this activity. Track where is my attention. You can ask yourself that very question when you find yourself getting caught up in stress. Where's my attention right now? Am I worrying about things that really aren't helping me?
Mm-hmm.
Or am I recounting the past, knowing that I can't change that unless there's some learning there? Or can I really just be present and focused right now? So that would be an activity that maybe you could do.
What I love about that too is that you have choice, right? I'm aware that maybe I'm forecasting forward or that I'm worrying about something from the past, but I have choice in what I want to do there.
Absolutely.
I can come back to the present moment, or maybe this thought requires some extra attention. I need to spend some time there, but I'm fully aware that I'm doing that versus
Right.
the mind just sweeping you away into thoughts without even realizing it.
Right. It's really helpful for those days where you're thinking, what did I get done today?
Right.
What did I accomplish? Especially under stress, that's a natural occurrence. This can bring you back to that moment to help you kind of prioritize.
Right. And we got to know where we are to know where we're going to go, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Great. So the second component of awareness is really just taking in what you're feeling or what you notice at the time. So I invite you to maybe think back to the last holiday or a last stressful event that transpired at a holiday gathering, or maybe it's not even holiday related. Maybe it's something that happened to you a few months ago or last week. But think back to that time and notice, where do you feel stress coming on? Where does it hit you? Do you notice tightening in your jaw? Do you notice a furrowed brow? Do you notice sometimes I'm walking around like hunched shoulders, just feeling a lot of tension within the body? My family might notice I get a little more short-tempered or less patient when maybe I need to practice patience the most, right? Or maybe emotions come out where I typically wouldn't find myself being sensitive, and all of a sudden I have an emotional response to something. So it's really key. Our body gives us lots of signs and symptoms when under stress, and typically we don't slow down enough to notice them or catch them early. So really paying attention to how are you feeling, what are you noticing, almost as a pre-flag that goes up, so that you can jump in and activate your response early. Gives you a little bit more time and awareness.
Absolutely. So we just wanted to share with you a little bit. The American Psychological Association had a study out, and they were talking about some of the common things we see during the holidays and stress. You might start noticing people are feeling nervous or sad, fatigued. These are some of the very same things that you were mentioning. Things that could be symptoms or signs that stress is coming on. What this makes me think about is when you get a cold, we often tend to know that right away, right? I'm starting to sniffle, maybe I get a headache every time. We're so very aware of what those often tend to be, but when it comes to stress, we don't often think of it in that symptom-based term. So if we can get to know those as clearly as we do maybe a cold symptom, just like when we get a cold, we might have a better chance of catching things early. So again, we're not alone. These are common signs and symptoms that we experience during times of stress.
The other thing to add to that is, those are my signs and symptoms, and maybe when I see these show up on you at work, perhaps, it will make me feel less defensive. I might understand you better, thinking she must be stressed, or maybe she's experiencing something at home or at work that I'm not aware of, but it's showing up like this. It's not about me necessarily. It's more about what's going on behind the scenes. So you can use it for yourself, but you could also use it providing that empathetic vantage point too, and looking at it from other people.
Right. I appreciate that a lot of our awareness techniques we're looking at are for self, but for others as well, so we can interact with them as best that we can. So another way that we might look at these ideas around stress is to consider what's within our control. We've been talking a lot about that idea of control. What's our ownership in it? What part do we have to play in it? And some ways we can look at this is using what we call power of thought questions. So as Brooke took us through that exercise, kind of pausing for a moment to see what we noticed within ourselves, perhaps a thought came up, something that you've been struggling with, something that you're fearful when you think of the holidays or worried about that's upcoming. We want to see if we could take that thought and play it through some questions, just to see if we might come up with some different answers or some other ways to look at things. So one thing we might consider with this thought: how important is it really? This one is key for me because it is not meant to be dismissive. It's not meant to say, you know what, Brooke, just don't worry about it, right? There's some things that are so important and they are worth our time. But there's other things that really aren't. So it's the pause to ask the question, what do we notice? Is this really worth the time I'm investing in it? Maybe yes, maybe no. Not so much about the answer, more about pausing to ask the question. Another thing we may ask, will this matter to me 5 years from now? I love to look at this in reverse and say, what do you remember from 5 years ago? So as we're talking about holiday stress, taking a moment to just look at, what do I remember from the holidays 5 years ago? Really powerful exercise to see what stands out for you. And this helps us maybe get a different perspective on the thought or situation that we're working with. Is what I'm telling myself true or real? We often like to add, as we work with people, 100% true or real. Some of us can be very convincing and we have every argument, but can we say for certain that this statement is true or real? And then what can I do to change this situation? So that control piece, what's within our power to take action in this situation? We can't control what other people do, but what do I have control over when we think about the holidays? Anything else you would add with this one?
I think just a concluding question I often ask in myself is, if there's something I can't control in a particular situation, then maybe the only thing I can control is my response or my reaction. And that is something I could empower in myself when I can't change other people or a particular situation.
Right. So again, this strategy is not about devaluing the thought or the worry or the concern, but it gives us some potentials, some different ways to look at it, different avenues to explore versus reacting to the first instinct that we have.
Right.
And this one, the final one, really helpful. What has helped in the past? So what have we found success in the past holidays, even if it only worked one time? And maybe it wasn't at the holidays. Maybe it was some random time at work that you were stressed or you had a worry or a concern, something that helped you continue to move forward in the direction that you were going. Consider all those as tools and potential things to look at that we can use going forward. It's that self-efficacy kind of piece, right? Using what we know has been successful in the past to try to give us a different perspective going forward.
You know, I hear a lot with the guests and clients that we work with through the Healthy Living program with that last question of what's helped you in the past. We hear things like, I take better care of my sleep knowing I'm going to be going into this really busy time, or I go for walks, or I focus on my breathing, or I turn to a friend for some support to kind of share my struggles or what I'm going through right now.
Yeah.
So it's tapping into all those tools or behaviors you've used.
Right. Absolutely.
Right. The third strategy we're looking at today is cultivating positive emotions. So here's where I'll invite you, Jamie, to play along with me, but also for those at home, if you could also join us and just think back to a moment in the past week or two when you really felt something positive. And it can be anything. It can be a simple conversation. It can be a meal. It could be something that you excelled at, or maybe something to do with your children or a family member that brought a smile to your face, something that you just felt really good about. Give yourself a minute. Did you come up with something?
I do. I've got it ready.
All right. Do you mind sharing?
Sure.
Okay.
Last Friday, I got to spend a little extra time with my 3-year-old son. And we spent the day together doing a variety of fun activities. But I would say we stopped at Target, and that brought a whole new meaning to shopping for me.
Okay.
It was a very joyful experience because for him, we had to stop at every single thing we saw. And if it was a hat, we had to try on every hat. And if it was a scarf, we had to touch every scarf. And we had to explore every bag and look at the shape and the design. And he just appreciated everything about it. The colors, the shapes, the textures. And it was the most fascinating experience. I was kind of on a mission, let's go in and get what we need, and he was not in a hurry at all and really enjoying every moment of it. Biggest smile ever, and nothing was off limits. He was really enjoying everything.
It sounds like you had a different shopping experience than you normally have.
Yeah, definitely don't have that with my older boys, so it was kind of a fun experience for me.
Yeah, I was going to ask, what if you could pick one or two words to kind of label your energy or expression or emotion right there, what would you give that?
Definitely a joyful experience.
Okay.
but a lot of curiosity and kind of amusement in it too. It was very playful, which I loved. We don't always get to tap into that. And once I kind of got in the groove of what he was doing, it just made a really fun experience for us. Not even having to buy a thing, but we really experienced so much in a way that I wouldn't have otherwise done that.
That's where your other boys would have asked you to buy something.
Exactly, right. Yeah.
But I don't know if you noticed this, or if you even noticed this from home, Jamie's expression when she was talking about that moment, how vivid it was, how detailed she thought about it. Your energy was up. You were smiling through most of that conversation. But you had a positive energy that went along with capturing that moment. And that's something that we're going to look at here just for a second. So I invite you to think about, what would you label your experience at home? What would you classify that moment that you just talked about if you were to give it one or two words or adjectives to describe it? I'm wondering if you would classify them as any of these. So Barbara Fredrickson, she's a researcher at the University of North Carolina and does a lot around positive psychology and has kind of termed positivity, but she's identified these 10 positive emotions and writes about them in her book. There's joy, you use the word joyful, gratitude, serenity, which could be a calm or just very peaceful feeling, interest, which might go along with your curiosity that you talked about that your son had, hope, pride, amusement, I think you used the word fun in there, awe, which could be just like wonder, or curiosity again might creep into that one, inspirational, or love. So think about how you answered that from home, if any of your descriptions match some of those. But what these positive emotions do is what we just saw happen, right? It increased your energy for that time. You really savored that moment, and you were almost, could have been in an action state. You had energy built up to be able to maybe go and do something thereafter. And that is, I'm going backwards here, something that we look at with Barbara's work called the broaden and build theory, where it's this upward spiral, where we have these positive emotions that really open us up for novel thoughts and ideas, and they just broaden our sense of others as well as your internal resources. So for if you wanted to take some action to go and do, or just connect with others socially, that's a very actionable state. So these daily experiences, just like you shopped at Target, that probably happens for you a couple days a week, right? Grocery shopping and whatnot. These daily experiences of positive emotion really produce this growth effect in our competence, whether it's knowledge or a skill, optimism for how we can see life being good in some ways, and just really, really building your resiliency. So one, I use that word cultivate, positive emotions, which to me is an active state. We have to actively seek them out. We have to actively pay attention. Again, there's that awareness that comes in to when these things are happening. Like you said, could it have been just a normal shopping trip where you're getting through your list?
Yeah.
It didn't sound to me like that. You were cultivating these moments of hats and trying things on and having fun.
Yeah.
And so you had to want to do that. You had to prioritize it. So actively cultivate these positive emotions, and to build your awareness around them. Just, they're probably happening already, and you just have to kind of catch them happening.
I kind of like this idea. I'm trying to think through, if I'm in a setting with my family and everything is stressful, how might I use this strategy?
Yeah.
And I'm kind of thinking, if I have some memories or thoughts of those positive experiences with my family, fun or joyful or kind of inspirational things that we've done together, kind of having those in my mindset that I can replay during some of those stressful times. Because it definitely, in replaying it, as you said,
Brought it back
felt much more energetic, shifted everything around. So maybe cultivating some of those prior to going into some times that could be stressful.
Yeah.
Might be a good way to look at that.
Yeah. Kind of a prevention method going in.
Absolutely. So another way to branch off this positive emotion, as we kind of mentioned, with these other words we're exploring, Stuart Brown also has a wonderful book out on play. And this same playful idea came to me with the shopping experience, because that was very much what it was like. There was a lot of enjoyment in it. It wasn't outcome focused. So we were looking at just the experience, not what was that I had to finally purchase and get on my list, just enjoying that time there together. So we know that this idea of play can be very powerful something everyone has innate. We do this naturally when we're young, and then as we grow, we often find that it starts to be maybe looked at as, oh, this shouldn't be something I do, this is maybe not socially okay at my job, and we kind of repress these opportunities for play in our life. But they're very instinctual. They're things that are natural to us, and we want to cultivate them because they can also build our resiliency, shift our energy, and help us change our experience a little bit. We know that it helps increase happiness. It increases our creativity and our inspiration. Definitely helps with problem solving. This text has a lot of great research in it around that idea of problem solving and how play can help with that. But we took a few key things from this book, ideas to explore around play. And Brooke, if you don't mind participating with me on this one. One of them being taking a play history. And what we mean by this is just kind of thinking back in your life to those times that were really fun for you, that were really playful. Could be when you were young, at any age, but those activities you really enjoyed. If you were to think back, what are some things that you find fun or playful that you really enjoy?
Growing up, so as a youngster.
Yeah, we can expand it as far as you want.
Okay. I actually picture myself riding my bike, running around the neighborhood with the neighborhood kids, playing hide and go seek or capture the flag. So I see a lot of social connections happening there with friends. I played a lot of sports growing up, so being back out on the softball field or playing basketball and working towards a common goal, but laughing and being strategic and supporting each other too.
Yeah. So part of this play history then is considering what were those things that you used to enjoy doing, and then asking yourself, what's keeping me from doing them now? What are some things that are standing in my way from being able to engage in softball or some of those other activities that you used to enjoy? So we want to consider those. How can we work with them to bring in some more time for play within our life in a way that works with us and doesn't make it an added stress activity? The other thing we want to do is immerse ourselves in play. So finding opportunities whenever you can to have this playful spirit. Can you think of times that you've been able to find a little play in your day?
I think of one most recently. I have a kindergartner, and he's learning some new words. We have these sight word flashcards, and my typical style, right, in working with him would be, what's this word? Memorize and say it back to me. And we came up with a game. He really likes to play football, so between each word, we're throwing a football, and he has to make a catch. And while I thought this might add a little more time in my day, I've really come to enjoy it because it's meaningful for him, and he's having so much fun, and it makes learning that much easier for him.
Yeah.
So we do sight words with a little football.
Yeah. So even though it's maybe taking a little extra time, you're getting a lot of energy back from it and a lot of enjoyment and connection in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Good. We want to give ourselves permission to play. This one is often the biggest hurdle, right? We may say, oh, sure, I'd love to go play a card game, but I don't have time for that. I have all these other things to do. It's going to feel a little bit unfamiliar at first, this idea of engaging in playful activities if you aren't used to doing that. So giving yourself permission. And just as we did at the start of this webinar, we asked you kind of what was your motivation in wanting to change your stress level? The same question would be asked here, considering why would I want to engage in more playful activities? What do I think it might bring to me? We know that when you spend this time with your son, both you and for him, it doesn't stop as soon as that game is done. Right? The energy carries forward, the inspiration, the creativity, and we see that from the broaden and build theory that you were just talking about before. So we know engaging in these playful activities will change the course of your day, change the course of your experience. Giving yourself permission by reminding ourselves, what are these benefits that are going to come from this if I allow myself permission to go into the uncomfortable a little bit and have a little play built into my day. And it doesn't even have to be big scale things. Think of people that make you laugh. It can be simply having a laugh at work or listening to music for a moment. Anything you enjoy. It doesn't have to take a lot of time.
Relating to the holidays, it makes me think about, the white elephant gifts sometimes that we do at celebrations and how, quirky and kind of fun that they are. So bringing little things in like that. stocking stuffers that we do in our family that are kind of just jokes and playing around, but how it really sets the mood and the tone for some of those things going in.
I think of the elf on the shelf. That's been a big one, right?
Right.
Get creative and have some fun. Where is he hiding? And
what's he wearing?
Everyone's anticipating. Yeah. Lots of interesting opportunities there.
Right. So encouraging our viewers today to think about where can you build in elements of play into your holiday themes coming up.
Absolutely.
Another positive emotion we really want to highlight today is gratitude, as we're heading into Thanksgiving here in a few days. And this idea with gratitude is that it can be done in so many different ways. And with gratitude, I see it being two things. One, a physical process where you're actually cultivating and doing something with gratitude. And two is more of a mindset or perspective of where can I see these grateful moments. So here are some ideas. One would be to create a list. Just start writing things, typing it in on your phone, or putting it in a calendar perhaps. Just a couple things that you're grateful for in your day. They can be people, things that happened, changes that are being made, whatever it is that brings about a feeling of gratefulness or appreciation. You could journal if you're more of a writer. I also like taking photos, and I have a good friend at work that you and I both work with, and she's an amazing photographer. And I think of her in that this might be a skill more up her alley of, rather than writing, I can capture some pictures on my phone of these grateful moments. So you can do it visually if you're a visual person. There's a couple web-based apps. One, Attitude of Gratitude. I know I have that one on my phone myself. And then Gratitude 365. And these, again, are just examples or ideas. There's thousands of them out there. But what they do is they allow you to list them. Some include you the opportunity to upload photos. And what I like about that is you're not just doing it once in the moment, but that you can go back and look at it for the week in the past or last month and just kind of recall some of those memories. So it can be twofold there. So again, we proactively have to cultivate gratitude. For a lot of us, it does not seem like a natural thing maybe that we want to do, or perhaps the holidays are just a really difficult time for us. But if I'm thinking I have to proactively seek this and do this, it gives me, again, that sense of control and choice. But that it might not, I'm not waiting for it to happen. I'm actively seeking it out. And gratitude for the everyday things that you're seeing in common, things that you're seeing in your own home or your typical life. Not big events. They don't have to be big events like a new job or a new child or anything. It can be simple, small things that we can appreciate in addition to those big things.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the last one there is more of the mindset, and I like to credit this back to Dr. Amit Sood, who has written the book Mayo Clinic Guide to Stress-Free Living and is one of our mentors, along with several others here at Mayo Clinic. But this idea of what went right within what went wrong. So even that thought of this didn't go exactly how I wanted it to today, what good kind of came out of it? What's it better than something else? I'm thankful that this happened to me and not to my daughter or someone else that I might love or care about. So kind of carrying that spirit with us of what went right within what went wrong.
I like this activity too in terms of, as you know, I put on my Outlook calendar at the end of each day kind of what went well. And I write myself an email and I send it and I make a list of what went well at work that day. Yeah. Because it's often easy to kind of remember those last few things you had at work. And if it was a stressful meeting or a challenging day, you might forget those small things that really made your day. It was a laugh with a coworker, it was a funny joke that you heard, and then that opportunity to relive it changes the energy. And I want that before I leave to go home. Yeah. So a great way to kind of reconnect. What actually went well today?
Changes your perspective a little bit. So. Another great text is Thanks by Robert Emmons, and he really has set the stage for researching gratitude and exploring more on the benefits. So if you like that type of literature or want to read more about it, that might be a resource for you. But what we're finding with gratitude is that it can have so many health impacts when people are practicing it and feeling like they're living a grateful life, reducing symptoms of stress and illness, helping to boost our immunity, it can help with sleep. In one research study he looked at, people he found actually were reporting that they exercised more. There were some correlations with gratitude and exercising. And we just take better care of our health. So it helps reduce stress and helps also build our social relationships.
Right. We wanted to just provide for you a few things to consider or play with when it comes to gratitude practice. Just like anything else, if we stay and do the same routine every day, the mind tends to disengage a little bit. So even with gratitude, if I make the same list every day and include the same people every day, not that we aren't grateful for them, but the mind can start to disengage and say, this gratitude thing, I don't have time for that anymore. So we want to find ways that you can stay engaged with it. Think of people that you might not have otherwise thought of. So we gave you a list of some people here that you might consider. Or things to think about around the holiday. Think of someone that has perhaps helped you in some way. And with this, I think of our FedEx man or the mailman, right? I am so grateful they're bringing that last minute gift that I ordered because I really need it. And I don't know who they are, but I'm so grateful for them. And just acknowledging that person for what they shared and provided for my family. Or I even think of pizza delivery person. That person in the eyes of my children is just amazing. They get so excited when the pizza person comes. It changes their day. It's a highlight for them. So gratitude for people that are helping and providing small services for us. And again, a list of things to play with here, but stretch your imaginations. It doesn't have to be people that you absolutely know. Perhaps it's people that have just inspired you in some way or touched your life in a way that maybe might not be up close, but has impacted you in some way.
So the idea here is be thinking about others in your circles that you could be grateful for, because typically our first thoughts are maybe those that are most closest to us. Really extending our circles allows us a broader perspective and mindset.
Right. Not that they aren't important, but
include them too.
Exactly. The other thing we just want to continue to encourage is this experimental mindset. We've kind of been talking about that. That broaden and build theory is very much revolved around this. Continue to foster curiosity. If we show up at the holidays saying, you know what, I expect the same people to be there, it's the same situation, it's the same meal every time, the same conversation, that's kind of a heavy experience, and we'll probably get the result that we're expecting. But if we go in and say, this is a new year, this is a new potential, what can I find new within this holiday meal? Even if it is the same meal that's always been there, maybe there's something I didn't notice from before. So I kind of think back to taking my son's curiosity approach in the shopping store, engaging in something new, playful. We don't know what the results are. It's an opportunity for us to learn. So going in without judgment, free of expectation, and just being open. Perhaps having some open conversations, just listening to our family members or our friends where we might otherwise want to be giving advice or talking over them. See, what can I learn from taking a different approach to these things?
I love that learning approach, because our mind wants to tell us what we're doing is true and real and right, but maybe it really isn't.
Absolutely.
Taking in others' perspectives.
Absolutely.
So these are, again, just some questions that perhaps you might want to consider or jot down today. And these transpire before a stressful thought or event or even after. So you can see here on the slide, these questions here might be something more that you want to think about before going into a stressful something, conversation or holiday gathering. What does my meaningful holiday really look like? We introduced that idea earlier. Does it have to match what others are seeing it as meaningful? Because maybe it does and maybe it doesn't, and that can be okay. And what am I really needing or wanting out of this experience, and making sure I try to attain that in some way. So if it's having conversations with others, how can I take action to make that happen? If it's sitting back and just kind of watching it all unfold, knowing what you want out of it before you go in can be helpful.
Yes.
And then post-stressful event could be, what went really well that I could appreciate? What would I do differently for next holiday? This ties in with your learning, right? What did I learn as a result of this? Knowing that I can't change it, but maybe I could improve the next holiday gathering or the next conversation I might have with someone or for next year.
Absolutely. So the final thought we want to consider here is savoring the moment, allowing us to slow down and really take in the situation at hand. Being mindful or kind of lingering on the experience a little bit. as we did that moment of pause in the beginning, it's a great opportunity as a way to savor the moment. Slowing down, taking a couple deep breaths, being aware of what's in your environment. What are the sounds around me? What am I hearing? It's a wonderful time of different smells and recipes that are cooking. What are the people around me? The sound of the conversation. So engaging in your environment and using your senses. Anytime we use the senses, it's a great way to draw us back to the present moment, which allows us to slow things down, savoring that moment. And then when we have these positive experiences, slow down there too. So take a moment to really, what does it feel like to have this joy? What does it feel like to be content? And just sitting in that, really getting to know that feeling and what that's like. We're often in such a hurry, and reflecting back, journaling back in those gratitude journals can be a great way to relive this and savor that moment. Consider the idea of, I want to make this moment a memory.
Mm-hmm.
And anytime we've made memories, right, we really have to fully focus and engage in that situation. It wasn't something I was partially paying attention to. So single tasking, bringing all the senses present, paying attention as if I want to capture this into a memory. Great model to follow as far as savoring the moment.
I think with savoring, we think about slowing down. And when I do that, it puts back in my lap this idea of, what's my perspective? Is what I'm worrying about really important for me right now?
Yeah.
Does this holiday meal have to be perfect in my mind or expectation in this way? And maybe my expectations are very high. And could they be lowered a little bit and still have a great celebration or holiday?
Absolutely. And I love this topic of expectations because we think of this wonderful Christmas movie, right? Christmas Vacation, and Clark Griswold and all the experiences he goes through. And we can see from the very beginning of the movie, he has high expectations of the best Christmas ever. Everything's going to go right. And we want to consider what are expectations and what is reality, right? He goes out and buys the best Christmas tree ever, maybe not considering it's way bigger than what his house can accommodate, right? And in this picture, he's decorating with all the lights possible, and the power shuts down, hasn't considered how much power it takes to do those things. So with expectations, we want to also consider what's the reality of the situation here. When we continue to pair those two pieces, and that's how we can keep our disappointment or stress at bay. So what are the expectations I'm coming in with? What is the reality? And then how do I choose to move forward from here?
Great thing to question again in ourselves.
Yeah, check out that movie. A lot of great tips in there.
And it's playful.
Absolutely.
These are a few just helpful resources for you that some of which we've mentioned earlier, the Mayo Clinic Guide to Stress-Free Living. We also have a Mayo Clinic Guide or Handbook for Happiness that's available. But some of these others have good ideas for mindfulness and slowing down, or ideas for monthly focus areas, and just general information on gratitude.
Yeah. Love, a lot of them include practices. So how do I actively work towards changing my mindset?
Right. First step is building awareness.
That's right.
So now we'll open it up for questions and discussion, and here again is where you can use your chat function and email or chat in questions back to us, and we'll try to get to as many that we can today. In the event we don't get to your question, we will try and write a response back to you within a week or so you can come back to the web platform and check that out. So we'll take these here one by one, and we'll read them out loud. Do you want to go ahead?
Sure. You want to start with this one?
Sure.
Okay. So our first question. My aunt passed away a few years ago, and ever since then, my mom has been trying to fill the void during the holidays. My aunt always used to make the food, and she was a fantastic chef. So now my mom is trying to do all of that. My aunt also had a lot of other traditions, and as great as those were, it is now added stress for the rest of the family because mom is trying to do all of those as well. It is almost making the holidays less enjoyable for the rest of us. How can we talk to my mom about this?
First of all, she must have been a very special aunt to your family. Sounds like she really did a lot there. And not surprisingly, mom is trying to take on the role of this very special person and to do that. And I wonder if we could even apply some of those power of thought questions that you talked about a little bit, asking myself, what's most important at this time? What will my family remember 5 years from now? and kind of helping to shift in that perspective perhaps. Or maybe you could even ask her, out of all of these things, how realistic are they that we will get to all of these things that your aunt as well as your mom had been doing? And what would maybe be the top 2 or 3 things? If you could only tackle those, what would those be as an idea?
Hearing a lot of meaning in this. For this individual, the meaning for her is carrying on these traditions and keeping that going. What an interesting conversation to bring the family together and find out for them too, what is the meaning for them? Perhaps that less is more idea. She's taking on all these things to try to make the holiday very enjoyable. But others might say, just taking a pause moment to share a few stories about her might be just as powerful without having to add these extra responsibilities in.
Yeah.
So kind of getting an understanding from everyone at the table, what's the meaning in here and how can we consider our actions in that?
Yeah. I might also suggest too, in just talking to your mom about what can we do to help. And I think we are a helping society and a helping culture, but it's really hard for people to ask for help. So if we initiate, what can I do to help? I really, give me your list. I would like to take something. It'd be meaningful for me to be able to make, your aunt's favorite cookies or whatever it was. So asking how you can help, but ask for them to be specific and that it's meaningful for you might help reduce some of that burden for your mom.
Absolutely.
How about this one? My family always argues during the holidays. How can I try and bring everyone together when this is going on?
I love this question. This brings a lot of reality, right? A lot of times we think everything about the holidays is going to be happy, and as we talked about, there is a lot of happiness in it. But sometimes there can be a lot of miscommunication and misunderstanding in here as well.
That idea of, is it my role to even bring everyone together? Right? You could maybe implement a few things. What is it I can control? Right. Well, maybe there's a game or activity I could invite people to do, to participate with. But understanding that each person has a choice and they may choose not to, and that is their choice. And so then it comes back again to, well, what's my reaction towards that? And just gaining a perspective perhaps that we might not have on the same values or different expectations, and that I'm going to still enjoy my time because that's what I came in wanting.
Yeah. I like that idea too, as we talked earlier about awareness, being aware of stress symptoms. So where is some of this arguing maybe coming from? Maybe there's something there that in open listening or active listening, we might be able to pick up on some concerns or some frustrations, or as we talked about in the beginning, stress can often come from that sense of lack of control or meaning, or demand resource imbalance. And perhaps in open conversation, we might hear some of those things coming out that might give us a direction as far as how we might move forward in the conversation.
And you know what you're doing right there, Jamie? I don't know if you noticed this in yourself as you were sharing, but you were delaying judgment. And I think that's a really key step when helping in a situation, or our brain is first wanting to make an opinion about something. This is good or bad. I don't like this, or I like this. And if we can maybe defer our natural judgment towards something or someone, it gives us a shift in perspective to maybe neutral that playing field and see it through another person's eyes before maybe my own reaction transpires.
And I love that, just remembering too, that may feel awkward.
Yes.
That may feel unfamiliar. They might be like, who is this person sitting in front of me? This is not your normal reaction. But as we kind of talked in that play segment, right, being willing to go there, knowing that this is important to me and these are the results I'll get from kind of stepping into that unknown.
There's a quote once that I had read that said, personal growth takes a little bit of discomfort. And so to put ourselves out there and trying new things can be uncomfortable, but that's how we grow, and that's part of change.
Absolutely.
Even though my family knows what the most important thing is, spending time with each other, they always seem to go overboard on the gift giving. How can I make them see that it really shouldn't be about that?
So we can clearly hear in there for this person, which is wonderful, that they see the holidays as something other than gift giving, right? The meaning is coming from something else. Perhaps it's just the getting together that is so important for them. But remembering for others, the gift giving might be an expression of love for their family. That might be a really important component to this as well. So using some of those awareness techniques to turn around and say, what is the meaning for them in this situation? Doesn't mean then that we just have to go along with it,
Mm-hmm.
but can help us guide it in the direction we might choose going forward.
So asking yourself a lot of questions
Mm-hmm.
during this process.
Yeah.
Let's see. How about when family members are in the midst of a tense moment? How can I decrease my own stress level without making it obvious? I kind of come back to that breath activity that we did as part of this exercise today. You could be doing that right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sitting in a chair or at a family meal, kind of just listening and turning inward, giving yourself another focus. Maybe it's your breath, maybe it's just checking in with your body and what you're noticing at that time. But then again, it's you're taking control, and it might not be obvious that that's what you're doing, is you're just kind of slowing down and pausing.
I loved that moment that you took as well, talking about the positive emotions and how we took a pause to reflect on that. That might be another opportunity. No one has to know that you're doing that, but taking a moment to reflect on a positive experience that you had earlier in the day, or one that really stands out to you. Just a moment to relive that while you're sitting there, and seeing if we can use some of the energy from that to help uplift that situation.
Let's see here. How about this one? I feel smothered by people during the holidays. It makes me feel like I'm personally drowning. I enjoyed the holidays when it was just me and my mother. Does this mean that something's wrong with me? And my first instinct is, if you're really noticing this strong sense of physical sensations with any stressful time in your life, always go to your healthcare provider. I think that's a number one step, just to, see what type of recommendations they might have, but to even explore it a little bit further. And involving your whole care team, I think, is really important in that.
I look at that situation too as a great opportunity for awareness. Are there other areas in your life, other times in your life other than the holidays, where you notice this same sort of reaction?
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps you're that type of person that needs to re-energize on your own or with less people for a little bit of time. So as we're gearing up for the holidays, I'm going to make sure I have a little quiet time, a little me time to prep and regroup and prepare for all those people that I'm coming around. Some people get very energized by being around a lot of people. Some of us need a little bit of quiet time or a little downtime in doing that. So a great opportunity for self-awareness and looking at other areas of your life and noticing if there's some other themes or things you can use there as well.
And I would add, maybe you don't have to cut all those times out where there's a lot of people,
right,
but maybe you're reducing your dosage. Maybe you're not staying as long, or you go early knowing that maybe not everyone has arrived yet. You could play with some strategies there, so you can maybe have just more one-on-one time with people.
Great idea.
How about this one? I am already starting to get stressed about Christmas. With everyone coming to my house, this will be the first time I've hosted it. I know that something will go wrong, so how can I prepare myself for that? I think with that one, what can I do ahead of time to kind of mentally prepare, whether that's making a list or talking it out with someone, so that you can go in best prepared. And we use a term in our field. It used to be called relapse prevention, and we've kind of termed it ourselves relapse preparation. But we should prepare for things to go wrong. It doesn't mean that we've failed. It just means it didn't go exactly the way we thought it would. And so how do I embrace the things that are going wrong and really looking at my personal expectations?
Well, and I was just pondering that statement of, I know that something will go wrong. That's a great statement. And can we rephrase that even to say, it might just go differently.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be wrong, right? It could be just a very unique experience that in the end we wouldn't change for the world, but it just wasn't what we anticipated. So using that experimental mindset again, not having to label something good or bad, but saying, what could I learn from it?
All right, we've got just time for one more question. Someone has asked, how long should I pause or do the breath activity? And I'm going to use that word experiment again and just see what you notice in yourself. So today we did it for maybe 1 or 2, maybe 3 minutes. That might be a great starting point. You can always add to that or build upon that. If you can only do it for 30 seconds, you can do it periodically for every 30 seconds. So I think work it into what fits well for you, and you can always grow it. I would encourage you to start small, and then you can always add more to that. Would you
Yeah,
agree?
absolutely. And I think, how are we using it? So if I'm using it in the moment, chances are it's only going to be a minute or two, right? We can't necessarily disengage or completely disconnect. But maybe as a preventative measure, I might start taking a little bit longer time so I can get to know myself better when the opportunity arises. So I love that. Try it out, see what works for you with the time that you have available.
And with that, we're out of time for today. We really want to thank you for your time in joining us here with Mayo Clinic. We'll try to get to any answers to those additional questions that we might not have gotten to. And until then, thank you and have a wonderful holiday season.
Yeah, thank you. Have a great afternoon.